Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast, where faith meets the front lines of culture.
We break down what's happening in the world, what's behind it, and how believers can stand strong in truth.
We're not here to fear the times, we're here to understand them.
Because being watchmen means staying awake, staying ready, and staying grounded in the Word.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast.
Coming to you live from the Ford Expedition in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn Express in Tupelo, Mississippi.
You missed a Mississippi. You said Mississippi.
I didn't.
There's a whole nut. You'll see.
You'll see. So for viewers of the podcast, yep, we're in our car and it doesn't look the same. Namely, we're on opposite sides, but maybe we're not. When we put the video in, no, we are.
Do I normally have an orange and you normally have a green?
That is weird.
I don't remember.
I've never noticed.
Never noticed.
I've never noticed a light.
It's probably because it's dark enough in here to notice we don't have the ring light on us.
Interesting. Well, hopefully it's working. And the reason why we're coming to you from the Ford Expedition is because we are on location, I guess, on assignment. What is that called when you go and,
Both on location, on assignment, in the field.
We're in the field. And our kids are upstairs in the hotel, living their best life. And
Unsupervised.
just classic homeschool family, right? Just do you. We're going to go in the car and record a podcast. So today we attempted to go to the Turning Point USA Ole Miss, whatever it's called, event, campus tour.
Yeah.
And the campus tour has evolved for the second half after September 10th to be primarily evening events, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, there's kind of a rotating list of speakers. And you probably have heard, because there was quite a lot of people on the stream. There's a lot of content already on social media about it. But Erika, Kirk, and Vance were the speakers this evening, which we had already planned when we decided to come here. We had already planned to go to the one next week in Auburn. So we are going to go to that. And we do have general admission tickets to that one. By the time I heard that Erika and JD were coming to this one, I was like, ooh, I really want to go to that. But we had already had some friends that were meeting us in Auburn. So by the time we decided to actually come, the general admission tickets to this one had been all sold out, claimed. And so I kind of was on the fence about what to do. And then I emailed the show, the Charlie Kirk show and TPUSA. And I didn't get an email back, but Andrew Colvett on the Charlie Kirk show several days after I had emailed said, for those of you who are wanting to go to the Ole Miss show and it's, showing sold out, the students were not sold out, but the general admission, and of course they give priority to students. He was like, it's a 9,000 seat venue. The largest venue I think they had at that point was 6,000. So he was like, lots of people save a seat. It's free and they don't end up coming. So it should be fine. There should be plenty of seats. We'll just seat everybody who has a seat, priority to students, and then, you can come in. And so I was like, okay, cool. We're going to go. I feel good. We're going to get in. And we didn't even kind of sort of get in. Actually, all of the people who had the general admission seats were turned away. Some students were turned away. And here's why I'm totally okay with it is, how many undergrad did you say go to Ole Miss?
A little over 19,000 undergraduate students at Ole Miss.
Okay. If 9,000 or 8,000, however many they allowed beyond media, so, security team, blah, 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 showed up and stood in line. It was freezing cold today and rainy the entire time. And they started showing up. Gosh, the event was supposed to start at 5. It started at 6:30. but they opened up the line at noon. We got there at 1. If that many kids are willing to stand that long in the rain, in the cold, to maybe get into this event, I feel really encouraged and optimistic about the next generation and the future of this country, because that's really cool. And it was just to see the line, what it was when we got there at 1, to like the snaking around of how far the line went. Tom like did a time lapse of the whole line, like walked the whole length of it, and that wasn't even at its longest. It was just really cool to see that many students, and I'm sure there is a number of students that came from maybe not Ole Miss. Like there was probably neighboring schools. I know I saw some, high school kids that were there with their parents, and we did get to see Andrew Colvett and Mikey McCoy go by, which I kind of froze up and didn't take a picture. I was just like smiled at him. I was like, hello. And then everybody started cheering, and I was like, okay, I should have taken a picture. But that was a highlight. That was worth standing in the rain for hours and hours and being so cold. Also, my kids, bless it, if you are someone who got a flyer from my kids in line and are listening to the podcast, because we did have a couple of little cards made for this podcast, and the kids were happy and excited to go be extroverted homeschool kids who are obviously not socialized and go meet people in line and tell them about our podcast and give them a little QR code to link in and learn more about what we're doing here. So it was not a total waste. I think I asked the kids lots of times, like, is this dumb? Are you glad we're here? They had a blast. They thought it was an adventure. We do that a lot. We have lots of adventures. Also, it was just a beautiful fall day on the drive. We drove the Trace down, kind of misty, and the colors are like at peak right now in the south. And so it was a beautiful drive. And then we got to walk around Ole Miss a little bit, which it is, I know I'm supposed to soften that Z. Ole Miss, excuse me.
Ole Miss.
I'm learning.
The sip.
The campus is really beautiful and, appropriate almost for an event of this nature, because it's very colonial and,
Southern, really.
Yeah, just the southern. Yeah.
You're allowed to say that anymore.
I know. The agriculture. Architecture was really cool of the campus. It just, and just to have that conversation with our kids about college and why we are in alignment with Charlie Kirk on college is a scam, and we are most certainly not pushing our kids down that road. Of course, their interests at current would not require that road, other than if they were to play collegiate sports. Yeah.
SEC baseball.
That, of course, is a high focus of everybody involved. But yeah, I'm like, you know what? There's actually hope for this campus. It's beautiful and lovely, but also obviously there's a spirit of Christianity and conservatism on campus that was very seen and felt.
I think
that's encouraging.
We should come up with a new university rating system that is based off of the percentage of the student body that attends Turning Point USA events, or maybe the membership of the Turning Point USA
their chapter.
Because I am an extreme critic of
all things
modern American university, and I'm right there with Charlie. I would actually say I've been saying it longer than he has.
He does like to claim trends starting.
Well, Charlie's a little bit younger than I, but I graduated a little bit. I graduated high school in 2002, and very, very quickly was recognizing some of the things. Granted, also I was out in the tip of the spear in California, and I was in the music industry at the time.
That's the tip of the spear.
Well, it's the tip of the spear of the woke nonsense stuff. Like, a lot of it came out of California, right?
Yeah.
Like, it starts in a lot of those areas.
The tip of the wrong spear.
Yes, I was there. Maybe it was in and around us sooner, but it was universities are always famous for those things being.
Which I will say, this is to your point, this is actually something I remember you telling me early in our relationship when I was myself quite liberal. Because, I grew up in California. I went to public school. I was not a Christian. And then I went to college. So, I went through the bing, bang, booms of pumping out Obama voters right at the end of that. And I probably would have been a them, they by now if I hadn't just run into this guy over here. But Tom, in the way that he evangelized me for Christianity, is similar to the way that he evangelized me for conservatism, if you will. In a similar vein that Charlie does, is through discussion, dialogue, questions, wisdom, posing just good thoughts to think on and topics and subjects. And I remember you talking about college specifically because obviously I had graduated and he had not graduated college. And he is one of the smartest people I know. Maybe, well, I didn't know Charlie Kirk personally, but he rivaled you. Okay, he's like the only man.
Charlie Kirk was smarter than me. I'm perfectly okay with it.
He was just a machine in the way he consumed information and his discipline. But you are very wise, and Tom, proposed this observation, let's say, that he had as all of his friends went off to college, myself included, and came back, one being anti-profit. So all of a sudden it was very cool to work for a nonprofit, and that was some sort of badge of honor or some sort of noble thing to be working for or striving to be working for, or to start a nonprofit, as if profit is inherently negative or bad or something to be separated, distanced from. That was an interesting point I'll never forget you brought up. And then the second being that you had read Atlas Shrugged and a lot of Ayn Rand's works and essays and such. And, obviously she's not a Christian. She's flawed in certain regards, but absolutely hitting the nail on the head in so many ways, especially now. Gosh, she was a prophet, frankly. And you said that a lot of your friends went to college and came back with this very aggressively negative opinion of her specifically and her works. And yet, not just had they not read anything she had written, but unwilling to do so. And that mattered. Not that I had that opinion. I'd never heard of Ayn Rand in my college experience. But of course, I was a theater major. So, that was its own indoctrination, and they didn't have to work hard on me over there. But I thought that's really interesting.
Public education is a primer for them.
Yeah. I just thought that's really interesting that even though I wouldn't say I was very well versed in debate or a terribly deep thinker, I'll just say it, or a critically thinking person at that time, I recognized how embarrassing that would be to just dismiss something and at the same time be unwilling to engage in the merit of the discussion, just be able to slander the source, if you will. And that is actually still something to this day that makes me nuts about people when you try to educate, you try to at least have a discussion, or especially with people you're close to, when you can actually go a little bit deeper on a topic because, there's some sort of shared relationship that you both value and don't want to just throw in the garbage and unfollow and unfriend and all the things you can do with strangers on social media. You can't really do that with your family members or close friends, or you shouldn't. And when you try to go a little bit deeper and start to send maybe an article or a book recommendation or something like that, I still find that people are so quick to be like, oh, I'm not even going to read the article because I saw who it's written by or the source of it. And like, I'm just going to attack the source of it and not even consume the information as if it's like, don't consume it, it's toxic.
No, that is definitely a marker of the modern liberalism, even though it's sad to even have to admit that is the case. But that was a big thing with, I was actually when I moved out of my parents' house, now my dad made me read a lot of the classics. I was very, very well read for
Very
a
well read.
8th grader, high schooler.
Didn't have
You
a
know,
TV, and you
all of
had a
that,
personal reading list assigned by your father
right?
outside of school. Sorry.
But but that was with my father's agenda, right? So like he's the one that put
Sure.
Ayn Rand in certain essays of hers, and Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal is still to this day, I think, one of the absolute best pieces of work ever written. Um, that being said, when I moved out of my parents' house, I went the other way, naturally, as we kind of rebel, and in my curious nature and all that. And I read a ton of the at least of the day of that time, the Howard Zinn. Gosh, honestly forgot some of it, but just a lot of the popular leftist
Leftist
professors of the time in the early 2000s.
philosophy.
And so when I found myself in conversations with my peers, during the holidays, they were all back from college or whatever, and I'm hearing, and they have heard of Ayn Rand. Now I've read their Howard Zinn. I'm literally discussing that with them, but they cannot discuss basically another point of view on these subjects with me because
they don't consume it.
Their professors have actually mocked and taught them to mock anyone who would even consider or hear out, or just the very idea. They've just been, if someone brings this up, mock them. It was, but they literally have
don't engage in the idea, mock it from the jump.
And mind you, too, and in these, this is at the same time that nonprofits as a taxable entity were really finding their way in, particularly the American left, right? The NGOs that have this is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Plus or minus a year. 20 years ago. And this is the early days when the left was setting up their infrastructure that we are getting glimpses into now of literally what has plagued the culture, plagued elections, plagued politics, plagued climate. The climate discussion is all of these. Essentially, it's just a massive propaganda organizations, massive just ability to soak up government funds and then use them to proliferate political ideology. Like the whole nonprofit thing has become a thing, and this was the early days of it. And more than one of my peers, who I respected in high school, I respected them then, that's why I was having these conversations with them, but it was tragic to me to hear these. The indoctrination was just dripping off their tongues. Like it
instant, yeah.
It was just palpable. So I was just like, what happened to you? And it wasn't that they went from like conservative to liberal. That's not even the point. It was like, how are you parroting these things you don't even understand? And how are you rejecting ideas
that you
aren't even aware of, that you haven't even heard of? And the whole nonprofit thing was wild. And I, just to kind of touch on that for a second, because there is virtue in profit, because you have to think like, what is profit in the most fundamental, just fundamental philosophical thing? What is profit? Profit, profit. And it, in my opinion, it represents value and efficiency. Meaning, in order for someone to come up with, profit is excess, right? It's left over. It's not breaking even, right? If we have a company, we either lose money, break even, or profit, right? And obviously, losing money, you're sick and dying and will eventually die. Breaking even, you're irrelevant. You cannot sustain that. Breaking even is almost the same as losing money because you cannot sustain.
Yeah.
that profit is life. It is abundance. It is excess. But where does profit come from?
It's value.
It comes from value and efficiency, which are two virtuous things.
Yeah.
Like, you are bringing value to somebody, and
you're finding a way to solve problems.
Managing something to allow for that value to remain in excess. And just to hear my peers in the early 2000s rejecting the very concept of that and choosing inefficiency, and nonprofits run entirely off of grants and donations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what
somebody else's excess is running the nonprofit, someone else's profits and value.
Totally. And so, I mean, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I just thought, we're on it, why not talk about it for a second? And I guess that's where my foundation of
college is a joke.
I wrote college off, and I wrote a generation of my peers off at that point. Now, that's not to say I don't know people who are educated that I don't respect highly. I definitely took it on a case-by-case basis, but unfortunately, I piled up a ton of use cases of examples in my own personal life where I was like, this is a joke. What a scam. And
that also was a generation of, still, two parents working, full and utter complete trust in the public school system. And this is not a criticism of parents, but it is a reality. And I know I just had a conversation today with a parent who has children younger than me, about 10 years younger than me. And she was lamenting how much she wished she would have homeschooled. She wished she would have known now what she knew then, or vice versa, knew then what she knew now. Because, man, she just, kind of surrendered over her kid to the system. And the expectation was, you're going to college. Everyone. I just remember that was not even a consideration for me. I just knew I'm going to college because everybody is going to college. That's just the next thing that happens after high school. And if you go to college, then you have 4 more years of telling all of your relatives and your mom's friends at Christmas that you're mildly successful still because you're in college and you're getting okay grades. Like, nobody has an expectation of you to be doing anything other than being a student. So you're like, yeah, still doing that. It's great. It's going really well.
But yeah, I think like that was correct. Like, college has been a scam for a long time, 2 decades, if not longer. I am starting to see some things that are making me go,
maybe there's hope.
Maybe there's hope for this system to turn itself around to some degree. And it's not only the kids, the young people, the students, showing up in a different way, which is absolutely huge. Like, I can't give them enough credit. I'm so thrilled to see a different type of approach to a university as a student. Just like, these folks are showing up with something already. They already have a set of principles somewhere there that maybe, we're all still figuring those things out at that age, but like, they already have a foundation that is it is guiding them already, and they're not just showing up as a blank slate to be molded into whatever the machine makes them. And that is huge. At the same time, there is still elements of professors and deans and the chancellors of universities and all that falling in line with this, but I'm definitely having to reassess how I view college. And I wasn't really joking when I say, like, we should have a new system to, judge universities. Because we talk with, like, Christian parents of, like, you hear about this Christian university. And we're like, we're like, oh, maybe our kids will want to go to college. We kind of, like, aren't pushing them that way. We're not really for it. But I am starting to see some things that I am absolutely for education, no doubt. I'm not for the system of indoctrination, though. But we talk to people who are like, oh, you hear about these Christian universities. I'll call it out. Belmont is in Nashville is referred to as a Christian university in name only.
Garbage.
In name only. It's a joke. Absolute garbage. And when they turn themselves around and I start to hear actual really good news from them, I'll say so. But you can't even trust Christian universities. Like these and Belmont is a Christian light, you know what I mean? But then there's like the full-on Christian universities where you hear the same stuff. So it's like, where can you even... So when I say like we should have like a Turning Point USA grading scale for universities, I'm like joking and totally serious at the same time.
It's important. You're sending your kids into this peer group. So it's not so much... it's not only what are the values of the professors and, what are the professing values of this school, but what is the peer group going to be like? Because they're as influential as anyone, right? Like if you're surrounded by, like we always say, a coffee shop conversation in New York City doesn't hold water on a farm in Tennessee when you're confronting some of these wonderful ivory tower philosophical ideas that are fine in thought only in a coffee shop in New York City. Like when you're living them out, it's a completely different reality. And those sort of conversations are happening not between professors and students. They're happening between students and students. So who are our kids going to be surrounded with? What's the majority thought? We were just saying this is such a brilliant move that Charlie started handing out hats. Gosh, whenever he did that, 2 years ago, or gosh, I think leading up to this election is when he did it. But it like exposed who is a Christian, like look for or not a Christian, a Christian, but also America a conservative. Yeah. If they're willing to wear the hat, or if now that there's 1,000 other kids on your campus that have the hat, you can wear the hat, or they all start wearing the hat at school. It gives you the feeling that you're not isolated and alone, that there's actually a community that understands you, that shares your values, that will also be willing to wear the hat and speak out. I mean, you know what I mean? Well, it's like when you see someone wearing a certain type of shirt, you're like, nah.
Courage is contagious.
Exactly.
Just the same way that fear is
absolutely
contagious. And
we saw that in COVID.
I think that is the brilliance in Charlie handing out the hats, is it created a vehicle to display the courageous. Because, and there's always...
Identify the courageous.
Yeah, there's always been folks who are willing to wear the shirt, or something like that. But it definitely... it just made it that much easier. And, I heard Erika say this, and maybe she was saying... quoting Charlie about, this is the courageous generation. Yeah. And I think that is, I hadn't thought of it that way. And to be honest with you, I'm 41 years old.
You are,
I'm not like super in touch with a 19-year-old, Ole Miss student. I don't know where they're at. But when I do dwell on kind of what they've been through, I mean, they went through high school during COVID.
Proms canceled, graduations canceled.
Well, and even just the formative, like, I was writing music, in high school, I was forming my opinions. I was obviously reading a lot, politically, philosophically, spiritually. You're really starting to come to that, like, sentience and yeah, I did. So I looked at you, I was like, you're going to love this. You're really coming into your own person. You're forming your own kind of like worldview, and their worldview was formed in the midst of the deceiver exposing himself more than ever, right? And society and the evils of society and government and politics exposing themselves more than ever. And
they also were forced to make choices of, I mean, I'll never forget when we flew in 2021, Thanksgiving, we flew back to California. And I was like, I'm not going to wear a mask. I will wear one if somebody like throws a fit, a flight attendant or whatever, I'll put it on. But I'm not going to voluntarily put this on my face. And, I told my kids, I forget what our pep talk was, but like, this is going to be hard. You're going to be stared at. Somebody might call you names. Like somebody might hassle us, about this. And what's funny is we made it through there and back. All but one flight, and we had connecting flights. We didn't wear it one time in the airport. We had to wear it through security. We didn't wear it, which is so funny that you have to wear it through security of all places. Now that I'm thinking,
I
like,
remember wearing it through security.
when they're, well, I think we had it like down on our chin or whatever nonsense thing you have to do then. But we did not wear it in the airport. We did not wear it on the plane there both ways. On the way back, when we left California and flew to our connecting flight, the flight attendant was cuckoo, and she was like, even if we were eating, she's like, you can put it in your mouth and lift your mask back up to chew. And she was really obnoxious, which was actually a lesson in of itself for my children. I was like, you know what? You get to decide what kind of person you want to be.
Exposure. Like
but yeah, I just remember my kids having to, I wish I could just do it for them. Like, I wish I could just absorb all of the angst or, fear or dirty looks or whatever. I mean, another example, I remember my daughter needed an eye exam, and this was in Columbia, Tennessee, which in Columbia, the mayor had made a very firm stand about no mask mandates, blah, blah, blah. I went in the door of where our appointment was, and they about, like, it was as if I was the Unabomber.
They're out of business
walking
now.
They sure are. But they got as if literally I had a bomb strapped to me, the way they moved towards me to get me out of the building. Mind you, there was 2 employees in that building and not a soul in the waiting room. And I was like, that's fine. I will wait out here until you're ready to see me, if that makes you. And she's like, no, you may not come in here. I was like, cool, cancel my appointment. We went over to another place. They were requiring masks and temperature checks. I was like, we're obviously not going here. And by the third place, I'm feeling like I'm dragging my, however Cadence would have been, 9-10-year-old at that point, around. But at this point, I'm making a point to her too, that like we're either going to get to see a doctor today or we're not, but we're most certainly not going to cave on this nonsense. And the third doctor, bless their heart, did not make us put on a mask. When we came in, we actually looked in the window and they didn't have masks on. I was like, ha ha ha, we have found our location. And we got her freaking eyes checked. But I'm like, I think there was a piece of, like I said, yes, they were growing up and going through some of those formative years, having to already have confrontations like that and make those choices about their own autonomy, this generation. Yes, exactly. Much earlier than I ever had to do. I never had to make bold stances like that when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 18 years old, like that, where you're going to get socially shamed. You know what I mean? Where it's going to be hard to do something. And on the flip side, also, they had a generation, that generation had parents who were having their eyes opened all of a sudden and having lots of conversations in the home around it, I'm sure, navigating hard things with employment and mandates and, all of that stuff. So I think there has obviously been a pivot since then, but they were in the midst of all of those things that nobody was talking about before that. Not nobody, but it was not a culturally normal thing to talk about these really heavy confrontational topics. And that generation, was born out of that, So that generation I just watched today is what I'm referring to. So, man, there's a lot of hope for the future of this country. There's a lot of hope for the future of higher education. Absolutely. I pray that they live up to that label that Charlie and Erika are putting upon them, the courageous generation. I see it. I believe it. I know my kids are not quite, they're alpha, I think. I think actually Cadence is Gen Z. She's my one Gen Zer, and then the boys are alpha. But
I'm afraid that this is but the beginning of what they're going to be tested in their courage.
That's for sure.
However, I am so encouraged by them already. Like, if I believe they're being prepared for it, and all in all, I would say in my Turning Point USA college meter, Ole Miss is leading the way currently.
This was the highest crowd they've ever seen at an event like this. They've certainly never had to turn students away. There was, how many, 2,000 general admission.
Something like that. And
people.
We counted, I did sort of a rough count because the line was like over a mile long, but winding through campus and stuff. But I counted like 6,400 before we got in the car to wait for a while. And
people added to that line.
Yeah, obviously.
And people had already gone in. A few more
thousand people showed up, or students specifically showed up at that point, because no general admission made it in, and some students were turned away. So they had, it was incredible.
It was incredible.
I was not disappointed really at all, because I was just so encouraged.
And all the hats, tons of hats, freedom shirts, all of the things to just go, okay, this isn't just a bunch of people that want to go in there and hackle. Is that the word? Hackle? Did I make that up?
Heckle or haggle is you got to choose, or you could hybridize them, bastardize those words. And
I do that a lot.
It was good. What was I just gonna say? The last part of that. Oh, back to what you're saying about the peers are more important, are also
as important.
I think we can't emphasize that enough, because frankly, I am not. I believe that it is our responsibility to give our children the biblical foundation. I don't send them to college for that. Could they go to Bible school? Absolutely. But that if my daughter wants to become a veterinarian, her Bible college is not the element. That is not the point of going to college in that case. But definitely the peers, the culture of the peers. And so I actually think, you're right that it matters, the professors and all that, but the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that is the most important part, because we can, if we're surrounded by the right people, we can have the discussions after our professor challenges us. And here's the thing, I am also really fond of professors challenging people's ideas. That's why you go to university in so many ways, is to have your understanding challenged, expanded and challenged, and
you
really
have to learn to defend it,
as you should. So that's all fine. It's as long as ideas are there to be tested, the professor's ideas, the students' ideas, it's a true environment that fosters that. And then the peer group is rooted in a somewhat common principle and virtue set. That's all I really
natural accountability.
That's all we really need.
Absolutely.
I'm not looking. It's not even. I guess I'm kind of talking to myself here. I'm not even looking for the perfect Christian university for my kids to go to. It's just that we have looked more and more that direction, because you're hoping that Christian university means that the peers will be good and the environment will be good, but even that hasn't been the case. So I guess I'm breaking some of those walls down. It's would I send a kid to Ole Miss?
It's not a Christian university.
It's not a Christian university, and I haven't looked into it. I'm just kind of throwing this out there. But from what I saw today, it was very, very encouraging and impressive to see the student body represented in the way they were.
Right. And even, we watched, so after we did not make it in, we stayed till 5:30 before we left. We found out, someone, thank you, sent me on Instagram that they were live streaming it at a restaurant just down the street. So we went down there, and it was absolutely packed. And wall to wall, when I say it wasn't just on one TV, there was TVs on every surface, and every surface was going to be streaming this event. I'm like, oh, that's cool that it's culturally accepted to do that in a college town at a bar, and that this place is packed out with students, or young people, we didn't get a seat there. We ended up just streaming it and driving, to Tupelo to get a hotel and move on with our day. But man, when we were watching the stream, particularly during, Erika obviously being very overtly Christian in her speech and in her message always, which thank you, I love that. And then JD following suit and, not shying away from that, but in his Q&A, which I do want to talk about.
Yep.
I was really, again, encouraged at the things that the student body were willing to cheer, and the amount of cheering they were doing, in things like abortion, or things that like still sending the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, home. And gosh, there was another big one that I was surprised. Oh, when JD was like articulating that the current responsibility of the government shutdown is squarely on the Democrats' shoulders right now. Tons of applause to that. I was just like, wow, that's actually interesting to see, not just that they're here, but that they're engaged and aware and know the issues and are willing to be brave and cheer about the issues, because certainly not everybody, obviously you're in the majority probably of people that agree with you in an event like that. But obviously people come in there to ask questions that are in opposition of JD or Erika, whoever else. But that was encouraging also.
I was also impressed. The questions. Kudos to Turning Point. I'm very critical. I'm always suspicious. Cynical at times, you might say, but always questioning. And kudos to Turning Point. The questions that were asked they were genuine.
They didn't seem screened or scripted.
All of the vulnerable points, if you will, that you would have considered screening if you were screening,
were
asked.
Israel,
harsh immigration stuff, faith stuff, abortion stuff. I mean, the gamut of just, there was nothing guarded or covered or don't touch on that subject kind of thing. So kudos to Turning Point. That's all, not that I expected different, but you're just always looking for those things when there's an element of and it's not the first time JD has spoken at a Turning Point event, obviously, but when
it's definitely unusual, he would be obviously Trump hasn't spoken at JD is the only one in the administration, I think.
And office holding comes to an event like that
and does a Q&A,
is hosting. There's always the pressure on the host to foster the environment for them to be comfortable in. Does that make sense?
Also, it's live streamed on Fox. So this is an opportunity for a real gotcha of the administration.
So just, I guess,
it is a vulnerability.
to Vice President Vance for fielding those questions. I thought he answered them very well too, which we can talk about that. But definitely, kudos to Turning Point, because that they were genuine. It seemed like we got a good amount of questions in that covered everything, and it was the gloves were off, and that was totally okay. And then JD, I thought he did a really good job.
I thought he did an excellent job. I mean, again, when you think man, what was so remarkable about Charlie was how young he was. It was always just, it's just so unusual to find someone so young with such wisdom and an ability to articulate a point, or to even have such a well thought out answer on basically anything that could be asked. That was where he really shined. And I thought JD had, obviously it's his job to do it, but he's only 41. He's not old by any stretch. He's new. He's a new politician. You know what I mean? Relatively speaking. I thought he did a very good job of coming across anchored. He did not, I don't think he conceded, or what was the word I used?
I don't think he dodged any of the questions.
He didn't dodge. He didn't
Israel stuff.
He didn't play politics where you kind of don't answer, you kind of talk around. He really did address the questions directly and didn't give the vanilla answer. Particularly with the immigration, he had a student that had a girlfriend who was here on a visa, and then he had a different student who is obviously here on a visa, ask pretty hard questions regarding immigration and the legal immigration, where he feels that should be. And I thought he was, very direct with...
He was very direct. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we actually have a problem because we have so many immigrants, we can't continue even legal immigration the way that we have in the past because we are just so overloaded. We have to reset. I'm like, man, it's one thing to be asked that question from just like a liberal student that's, trying to be a thorn, but to ask someone who is like, has come here and is genuinely asking the administration a question about their own future in this country, I'm like, that's a harder person to answer a question like
But
that.
he was direct.
He was very direct.
Answer that probably the politically correct answer.
No, he was direct.
I will say too.
And he got cheered for it. Like, it was like, thank you. We actually need it when you're firm. And I mean, that's why people like Trump, because it's like, we actually need someone to lead right now. Like, we cannot keep just saying the politically correct thing. We need to lead, and we need to make decisions that are right for this country first. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a lot of insight too, because I really wasn't familiar with the administration's
thoughts
platform
on
thoughts
legal immigration.
On legal immigration, and it was a little different than I thought, but it did make a lot of sense to me.
What did you think it was?
Well, I am actually very, very, very pro-immigration,
Mm-hmm.
but within the Constitution and Congress decides to set a number for how many, people we let in the country from what countries,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, there is a lawful way to orchestrate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm for it, according to the will of the people. 435 representatives, 100,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
100 senators decide what that is. JD was like, we need to
pump the brakes
on all of it until we get this sorted out. And I don't think that is even as someone who's pro-immigration, I actually can hear that out and be like, there's a lot of truth to that. Like, we have, and again, this comes back to when people treated this so irresponsibly, open borders for 4 years. And really, we've had this goes
been
all
an
the
issue.
way back to the Obama administration, even the Bush administration, Bush 2. Like, we have not appropriately handled our borders for
a long time,
20 out of 25 years. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, we do have a lot of harsh correction to make. But I also did not in any way get the impression that he is not anti-immigration.
No, not at all.
Story. He just said we are in a period of time where it is much more about the stoppage of than it is let's just continue doing this. No, we have some catch up to do in sorting out the 10, 20, 30, 40 plus million people that are here in a status that doesn't even exist. Like, it has to be sorted out. So I'm with him on that.
It was sweet to me because he was basically reiterating Charlie's exact stance on the issue, and it made me go, man, I bet you that his opinion, JD Vance's, was heavily influenced by Charlie, because Charlie talked about that a lot. And I know that they were close, and I know that Charlie had a lot of influence in getting JD picked as the VP, if not probably the most influence.
I think it's another one of those things where, like, JD Vance is the vice president because of Charlie Kirk.
100%.
The same way that Trump is the president right now because of Charlie Kirk.
Right.
And I should say, and Turning Point USA.
Yeah.
But yes.
That one is Charlie Kirk specifically because
JD, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, he had the influence.
Right,
Charlie has the phone numbers of the people, and he would even be like, I want to see in the emails when there was a number of names being thrown around for VP. Email me right now what you think, and I'm going to call President Trump, and it was like overwhelming in the emails, JD Vance, JD Vance, JD Vance. And Charlie's like, okay, I'm going to tell Trump, this is what I think, but this is what the people think, like, this is what we want. I know that he had a huge influence on that. And so I know he also, it seemed to me in JD's response that he had quite a lot of influence, Charlie did, on his stance on immigration. However, when his answer on abortion, I saw that he kind of split from Charlie And I'm sure he's very aware of Charlie's opinion. Charlie is a...
I feel like he kind of said that
JD did.
Maybe he was talking
I
about
say that
Trump.
to say JD Vance is obviously an independent thinker, and he's not just regurgitating what Charlie was saying to an audience that is Charlie's. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I saw him, kind of divert from Charlie's shtick on the abortion question where, JD believes there should be carve-outs for instances of rape or whatever. And Charlie absolutely did not believe that. But I think that's good I don't think that's good on the abortion issue. I think that's good.
His explanation was, basically, if the cost of being so principled is that we don't get anything versus what ground can we take. So I think it's like, I think in a way he was kind of saying, it's not that I disagree in my heart so much as in policy.
Yeah.
And
my
favorite, I'm just thinking of this now because I think he said this came up after abortion. My favorite question response or a response was in regards to, I forget the exact question, but the way JD ended up answering it was in regards to like how he's married to someone who's, still on her Wikipedia is referred to as Hindu and I guess he's Catholic, Christian, Catholic. And how do you reconcile that in raising a family? And obviously that was something like Wendy and I have walked through. Wendy wrote a book on it. It's called What If You're Wrong?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Plug the book. But I was definitely thinking about that and how it's like it is probably less. It's a story as old as time. A Protestant marries a Catholic. Christian marries an atheist. A Hindu marries a Catholic or whatever. Like this is something that's, but at the same time, we are in such a beautifully diverse country and world. And I thought he handled that very like eloquently and gracefully. And more than anything, vulnerably. Like I was like, you're talking like most men wouldn't share in a Bible study. And you're sharing this with, 9,000 college kids.
And all the streamers, Fox News.
Literally the like vulnerable parts of your marriage.
Yeah.
And how you are currently walking that out. And your hopes for how it works out. Like, I just appreciate
the humanity,
humility, vulnerability in that we don't get. We want more of that from. We always say, why can't we have real people? And honestly, you'll hear me be so skeptical of JD Vance here too, but it was great to hear that from him.
Yeah.
For me, because I think that is, I'm looking for real people.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for polished politicians. I'm looking for real people, principled people. And I just thought JD handled that beautifully.
Well, and the refreshing part about JD is his youth and the fact that he has young children. And Charlie would talk about once you become a father, what you're fighting for matters so much more. And we have just seen these politicians, even Trump, Biden, McConnell, they're not going to see the fruits or the consequences of their actions in their administration. They're at the end of their life. We see JD, he's at the beginning, hopefully, God willing, of his life and certainly of his kids' story. There's real skin in the game. And that's what, he was answering basically with that spirit of, I'm walking this out too. Like these things matter to me also, in the way that I'm navigating raising kids. But I think on the note that I think part of that same question, or there was kind of two questions back to back regarding faith, was, being a Christian nation versus a nation of Christians. And since we've talked about Christian nationalism and not being afraid of that necessarily, or not necessarily even thinking that's a bad thing, I thought he did an excellent job because the question was talking about forcing. I'm kind of combining a couple questions, I think, but
there were
forcing
two questions that came up around that subject,
Christianity on Americans. And JD said, historically, if you go back, Christianity is the originator of religious choice because in its nature, it is a religion of choice, like of free will. And so it cannot be forced on anyone. And if you are truly a Christian, you know that. And you wouldn't ever want someone to be forced into a position to, forcefully accept Christ, because we know that's not a genuine way to be saved, or force prayer on someone, or any of those things. That would never be what a Christian actually would want. And I'm like, what an excellent way to point that out and put that forward, because I've actually never heard that point articulated in that way.
But then he also
so
said,
good.
But if people want to pray in school,
they should be able to.
They should be able to. So it's this I think it's a very beautiful balance of just not forcing, but not excluding either.
Right.
That's the real issue.
And if we're going back to our founding, and we should always be looking to that and looking to the circumstances of our founding, like the interpretation of the Constitution is what the Supreme Court is supposed to be able to do through the lens of what the founders were trying to do in the, penning of the Constitution. We are a Christian nation. You can't get away from it. Like we are. And the left has tried to remove that from the story because it's relevant. Not because it's irrelevant. Because it is relevant, important, and absolutely a part of the picture. And to remove it would be to remove the whole point of why the Constitution and this country exists. So I think that it's okay to say, actually, we are a Christian nation. And so I don't know if I would go so far as to say there should be a preference, but there absolutely should be a protection of the values that this country was founded and built upon before there would be a protection of another religion, let's say.
Right.
This argument, Matt Walsh is toying with this, and I'm not sure I'm with him 100%. But I hear what he's saying, and I think I agree. I just don't know about the execution of it. But this idea that, we talked about last episode, Mom Donnie,
mayoral candidate for
New York
City.
And bringing in, Islamic ideology. It's in direct conflict with Christians. And the fact that he is throwing at Cuomo, you've been in this city for however long in leadership, and how many mosques have you visited is one of the things he threw out Cuomo. And Cuomo missed the opportunity to be like, I don't need to go to a mosque to serve the people that live in the city, first of all. But he was trying to get a gotcha, and Cuomo let him have a gotcha in that regard. But it's like, whoa, that is going to become a thing that we're going to have to talk about and deal with. There's a call to implement the Muslim call to prayer, which 4 or 5 times a day
in certain communities, because you have the Minneapolis, Minnesota area is heavily, and then you have certain areas in Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan's famous for it, where
Muslim areas.
You're talking every member on the city council, the mayor, all these people. They truly run geographic areas, districts, etc. They're naming the streets after great Muslims. And again, that is not inherently bad. That it's in some ways you could say it's no different than when African American people started getting streets named after them here too. Yes, it's not that we can't name streets after someone from another religion. There's no doubt about it. But they're literally changing the fabric of. There's not an assimilation. They're taking Dearborn, Michigan, or these different areas to something that more resembles Syria or Iraq
on purpose. That's the goal.
And that's and that is not.
That has never been the spirit of immigration in this country. That has
never been the spirit of immigration in America. And so I'm definitely there on that. One thing, if we're getting close, so just kind of wrapping it up. But the one bone I will pick with him, the last question.
Oh, I knew it. I was going to ask you.
Well, I'm going to go both ways on it. But the last question was about, basically why is Trump, picking on such a principled leader in the Republican Party as Thomas Massie.
Now, Thomas Massie is like your favorite hero.
Thomas Massie is my favorite hero. Yes. He and Marjorie Taylor Greene are, which actually Thomas Massie is way more proven to me. He's
been around a minute.
I put Marjorie Taylor Greene in there too because recently she has been on point, but I would die for Thomas Massie kind of thing. Like he has proven to me over and over and over again that he can withstand the Washington machine of temptation and corruption. Now, that being said, those people are the most hated by their own parties a lot of the time. And it's not that I expect corrupt Republicans to love Thomas Massie, but JD's response was, if you vote against the party every time, eventually the party isn't going to support you. And that's like
that's politics.
That's a fair response. And in fairness too, JD talked about how he's known Thomas Massie for
They're
years and years, way
personal
before he got
friends,
into politics himself. And so that's all good. I think where it also gets interesting though is just like, but what really pissed Trump off was around the Epstein files, and that.
I thought it was the big beautiful bill.
It was both. You're right. It was also the big beautiful bill.
We go.
We needed to dive into that at some point
because
there was a lot of trash in that. There was a lot of neocon trash in that. Government expansion trash, but that's neither here nor there. But for now, it is definitely here and there in the future when we talk about it on podcast. But in relation to that but then Trump's over here endorsing. Did he endorse Lindsey Graham or Mr. McConnell? Which one did he endorse?
Oh, I didn't hear that. I don't think either. I don't think McConnell is running again.
One of them's not, and one of them I thought got Trump's endorsement after being just an absolute pile of excrement for 40 years. And so it's like, I would believe it more if Trump was more principled, or in this case, JD was more principled in his answer, that you're not, so okay, you're not for the guy who's against you all the time, but I'd also like to see you be a little more principled with the corrupt sellouts of the party too, and not just.
But that wasn't what the question was. The question was specifically about Thomas Massie, and here's what I'll say about it.
But your answer, like, I think there's a through line there. So basically, being a sellout is the only option.
No, I think what JD was trying to articulate is just like any other relationship, because you are in a relationship with the rest of Congress, you have to pick your battles. It can't be everything is your battle. If you were in a marriage, you can't just disagree and be contrary to everything. You have to pick the things that, no, this is the hill I'm going to die on. And if you're dying on every hill, then you're dying. You're dead. I think that's more what JD was trying to say.
Well, at this point, it's funny because, with immigration, now, there all these issues, it's like a lot of us have been yelling from the rooftops for 20 years that Republicans had to stop compromising on them.
Of course.
And then finally, it's like there's one or two that we're like not compromising on. I would say immigration being one that we're just like fully no longer doing that thanks to Trump. However, but like that, we're deficit spending just
Absolutely.
Beyond, just so it's like I will always support, like, when does the party get principled in the other areas? And Thomas Massie is just that canary in the coal mine guy. He's just out there going, he's a Ron Paul. He's like, no, I won't do it. I won't vote to, quadruple the size of of ICE and Homeland Security, and I won't just expand the state a bunch more just because we have the will of the people behind us. We're going to remain principled here, and he stands up for that stuff. I'm always going to side with the guy who's anchored into what I believe is the right thing for the right reasons.
For sure.
But that's just me. But I still think JD made valid points there. It's obvious, but valid. And overall, I thought it was awesome. It was like a very personable chat with JD,
I love that he did a Q&A because that was in the spirit of Charlie, that he wanted to open it up. And I mean, that's again, it's historic because typically Q&As that are like more of the town hall type things,
curated.
Absolutely curated. They're fed questions. They're handed softballs, all the nonsense. This was not that. And that is historic in that regard. And JD is relaxed and honest, and I thought it was really great. And I mean, I know you've been a little skeptical or maybe reserving your judgment on JD, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan of JD. I feel optimistic. But yeah, overall, it was a lot of fun, a great event. I think it's great. And again, I don't know that we would have had this kind of a showing, this kind of movement, this kind of momentum, certainly not JD on a college campus, if Charlie had not been killed. That's just the reality of the situation and how God uses what the enemy means for evil. It's like an overplaying of the hand, and it's...
Well, and it's not like anybody's glad that it happened.
No, gosh, it's still an unimaginable hole.
How dare we let it go to waste, though?
And to see
let it be for nothing.
7 weeks later to the day, as Erika pointed out, we have still this much momentum, and it almost feels like we're just getting started. We're just getting comfortable in the movement. I just feel like that's really encouraging.
We're taking back college campuses.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
In and of itself is, I don't want to say a foregone conclusion, but that
Charlie did so much work
picking up speed, and I just don't see how it's going to be stopped.
Yeah, if you watched Charlie for any length of time and you saw how the crowds were even 3 years ago, 4 years ago against him, primarily all against him, and that's why he was there, because there's so many people, and he believes the Bible, and he's correct. The Bible says to go out into the public and proclaim the truth and correct error, and he was like, that's my mission. That one's mine. You might be this, that might be where you're called, and this is where you're called. That one's where I'm called. And so that's what he was doing. And to see now the whole flip of the energy of the crowds in his videos over the last year, even leading up to the election, man, just completely the opposite, where the majority of the crowd is there for him, in agreement, cheering for him, heckling whoever's given him a hard time at the mic. It's just, again, the power of one person, the power of courage and what that does, and that it is contagious. And, it is hard to be courageous. Remember, it is not the absence of fear. It is doing it afraid. That is what courage is. So that's your call to action, to be courageous and take that faith that's a noun and turn it into a verb. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Modern Watchman podcast.
Remember, truth isn't just something we believe, it's something we live out every day.
Stay alert, stay discerning, and don't lose sight of the hope we have in Christ.
Until next time,
be watchmen.